Then the next thing that we will be talking about is case routing mechanisms, right? So a routing here, this context, what does it mean? Okay, let us see that. Okay. So when I talk about people working on the assignments or people working on the case types, right? I need to tell who has to work on it, right? Which assignment is intended for whom has to be clearly defined. Correct? So when you
Yeah.
take this online transaction as an example, initially the case would be created by you as a customer. So once you make payment, once you confirm the order and all that, the authority now shifts to the vendor, which means the case is being routed to the vendor, right?
Yeah.
After maybe the vendor defines, or if he confirms your order, then it goes to the packaging team, right? It's not like one person would be handling it. There would be a team of people, correct? So at each step we need to tell who should be working on that particular assignment. Okay, sometimes you may have multiple people working on it, sometimes you need one single person working on it. So irrespective of whatever, you always should mention how or who would be working on a particular assignment, whose responsibility it is. Okay, like typically in our projects also, we have each task as a particular team member, right? So it is his responsibility that he should complete the assignment on time. Like that, here also, when we are dealing with business transactions, we should clearly mention who would be working on it. Sometimes it could be a single person, sometimes it could be a team of people. Okay, but the authority, but that routing important to make sure that the transaction would be moved across multiple people, or it would be assigned to multiple people at different stages, different steps. Okay. So when I talk about the different routing options, so I'll talk about two terminologies, queue and work list. So what
Sorry,
is
what
it?
is it?
Work queue and work list. Let me
Okay.
pull work list. Two are there. So what does this mean? Work queue and work list. Let me tell you. Okay, let us take this scenario. Example, today is my birthday. So what I do, I take a bunch of chocolates, and I suppose let us consider that I'm in the office, so I take a bunch of sweets and I put it on my desk. Okay, so for every person that comes and wishes, I would hand over a sweet. So some people might not be, interested in having sweets, but still out of, that courtesy, they'll accept. So where I am giving in each sweet. Okay. There's one more scenario where I take a bunch of chocolates and I'll just drop in a mail saying that please help or please serve yourselves. So whoever is interested in chocolates, they might come, right? Others may not come.
Yeah.
First scenario, I'm sort of forcefully giving sweet. Whereas in the second scenario, they are taking chocolates out of their interest, right? So
Yeah.
we have something called as push routing and pull routing, we call it. So the first scenario where I push things, where I say that you need to work on this assignment, is push routing. Second scenario where people will take the assignments. Suppose maybe one of our teammate, he has his deliverables all done for the day. So he might take one more task, which is probably of the next sprint. He might take it out of interest. That will be part of the routing. Okay. So push routing, pull routing. We call it work queue and work list. So push routing is basically a work list, whereas pull routing is part of work queue. Okay. You understood the push routing and the pull routing concept, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, when I talk about work queues and work list, okay, I'll put it this way. Okay, so here a few observe. So work queue is a list of all open assignments for a group of users. What is it? For a group of users. Whereas work list is a list of all open assignments for a specific user. So what does this mean? Group of users, specific user and all. I'll tell you. One more scenario now. Suppose I've lost
So,
credit.
sorry, work queue is push routing and work list is pull routing, isn't it?
No. Work list is sort of push routing. I'm telling that you need to work on it. I'm pushing the assignments towards them. So that becomes a
Okay,
push
so
routing.
that is work list.
Correct. So
Okay,
pull
work
routing,
queue is
pull
work
some
queue. You
assignments.
put
Is the
something in the queue and it's their choice to.
correct. Exactly. Correct.
Mhm.
Okay. Maybe I'll give a one simple scenario again to understand this better. Okay, I've lost my credit card. So what will I do? I'll call in my customer service of the bank saying that, okay, before directly interacting, I would get some IVR and all, right? Asking you to make choices. So they say that if you have some issues with account, click one. If you have some complaints related to, maybe your balance inquiry, click two. Or if it is something related to cards, press three. Something like that, you would get a, the IVR sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Suppose I click three. So now again I get some music or some sort of thing saying that you please wait or please hold when we put you to the operator. Okay, I'll be waiting. Now some random operator will come to address my issue. So they say, I'm so on John, I would like to help you. Like what is your issue and all? So they would ask me. I'll tell that I've lost my card. Okay. So they will immediately block my current credit card and they will raise a request for the new credit card. Good. So John says, sir, I have done all of this. You will get your new credit card within 3 days. Okay, good. The call ended there. The interaction was, stopped there. Done. So I wait for 3 days or 4 days. I still do not get my credit card. So what I do, I'll again call the customer service. So this time, can I let anyone interact with me or should I let only John take my call? Which one's better?
It's better John takes that call, but it
Right,
doesn't
because
happen, I
he
think.
has been, yeah, it, because he has addressed my issue earlier, he knew me earlier, so that
Yeah,
it's easy for me to interact with him, right? So
yeah,
this time specifically, I'll ask for John. Can I speak to John? Or in the
yeah.
earlier, anyone is fine for me, right?
Yeah,
So that
okay. From a
any one
customer
scenario,
perspective.
yes, any one scenario is a work queue. Whoever is available at that point of time, they can help me out. Whereas in the second scenario, I only need John there. So that specific user is nothing but a work list. Okay, I think now this makes more sense.
Yeah.
Work queue is a list of all assignments for a group of users. So there'll be a team of people in the credit card department. So they are all trained in addressing the credit card related issues. So anyone can access or anyone can provide me with the solution. Whereas work list, which means only for one specific user, only that user can address my scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, so like when it comes
It
to
can be
routing.
taken as a first line support and second line. When you go to first line, like if you
Mhm.
will be addressed first time when any issues, it will be addressed
Mhm.
by anyone. But after that, that call
Correct.
will be assigned to someone, and then you ask for the
Exactly.
specific.
Correct. Exactly. You can say so.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, along with this work queue and work list, we have other types of routing mechanisms as well. We'll see what are those. Okay. So the first one
Mhm.
is a current user. Like whoever is initiating the case, so he will always be the current user. So that is also a routing mechanism, right?
Mhm.
Then you have
So
specific
current
user.
user in this example is customer, isn't it?
Exactly. Right.
Okay.
I current user. So specific user, where in the second scenario only John has to address my issue. So that becomes a
Ye-
specific user routing option. Then I have work queue. So anyone, whoever is available
ye-
at that point in time, they can take up my
Yeah,
call.
this can be how the first line support is configured, isn't it? The initial
Correct.
one.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have business logic. So sometimes your routing would be based upon the specific scenarios, some special
Specific
scenario.
issues. Yeah.
Exactly. Right.
Mhm.
So probably the customer is a very high profile customer. Right? He has been part of, he has his account probably from a very long time in your organization. So that case needs to be immediately addressed and with a very high skilled operator, right?
Yeah.
We need to provide him the best service and we need to provide him a very quick service and all. So it's sort of a business logic routing option for me. He
Mhm.
might be a where business logic might be involved. So let us go ahead. We'll see how this routing works. Okay.
Mhm.
So let me go back. And before, if I talk about routing, I need to have some operators, right? Because without operators, I cannot, I do not know where it is being routed to and all.
Okay. You mean like a switch, like a in between where it is
No, no,
routed.
the actual people, I mean, the operators.
Okay.
Right? Currently, you're dealing with an admin. So admin can do anything. Even if you add in the routing options also, I can just uh, take the same case. I can complete it with an administrator. But how do I know
Mhm.
if it is directly routed to that person or that specific work queue or not? Right. So
Mhm.
we should create few operators first. Okay. So let us create some operators. Okay. So if you observe, how can I create operators from the App Studio is you have something called as users. Click on this users explorer panel. So you have people. So we'll see what this people is. So they are nothing but your operators.
Mhm.
Okay. So currently you see there are like two people uh, on the application. Let us see what is this admin and the role is an administrator. Okay.
Mhm.
Let me click
So
on that.
here that means here the interference is required, isn't it? Like
Mhm. Correct.
real
Correct.
people will be needed here.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. So this is admin at REC. Okay. Let me change the full name also. Just make sure. Okay, but now here I wouldn't add admins. I would add normal users who work on the actual end application. Right? I would
Mhm.
add in users here. So the role wouldn't be an admin. for the ones that I'm going to create now. Let us see how do I do it. So along with people, there's one more thing called personas. People, and then we have persona. And this is still loading. Okay. Okay. So people are the actual users, whereas persona defines the access. So what kind of access can I provide to that user? Is he a manager? Is he an end user? Is he an admin?
Okay.
So that would be defined on the persona. This is again still loading. So you can also create operators directly from the admin studio as well. And this can also be done from the app studio too.
Okay.
Okay, so here comes your personas. By default, while your application is created, you would get few personas provided by the system. Okay, so we can also go ahead create our own personas as well. Okay, so currently if you observe, there are two personas available provided by the system. One is a manager and one is user. So if you observe, so personas, I have like two personas available. One is manager and one is user. So obviously the access provided for a manager in an application would definitely be more than what an end user can access. Right? So in the technical terms, for users, we call it a case worker, whereas managers are called case managers. Now, I don't need to create any more new personas for now, but let me create some users. Okay, I would like to create some people and right. So let me add a user. Let me put it like this: user at the rate REC, and you see, I'll be able to select the role as well. User at the rate REC. I'm going to add a user. After which, let me add in. Then let me add in a manager. Okay, here is a manager. Then I'm going to add a senior manager also. And let me add. Okay, now along with, so here I have created three new operators. One is an end user, one is a manager, one is a senior manager. Good. Let's see if they are reflecting on the operators. Yes. Good. Okay. Now creating operators It doesn't just, it just says that they are in the application, but what all they can access or what all they can do would be defined upon the personas. So on the personas, you have managers and users. If you observe, now they are reflecting, the users are reflecting on the personas. Why? Because two users were created with the manager role, whereas one user is created with the user role. You see this under users. Let me see what is that. Oh, here I see one user, whereas for managers, I have got two users. Good. So far, we have been looking only in the BA or in the admin perspective, right? Where you create case types, you only design it, you run it. But an end user will not be able to design a case type, right? He can only run it, he can only execute it. Just like now, if I log in as a customer to the HDFC bank, okay, I can only make transactions there. I can check the balance, I can withdraw amount, or only those are possible. I cannot develop the banking application, right? So the user's view would be completely different. Let us see how it looks like. I'm just going to open the same application in the user perspective now. I've given the same URL, but let me check how it looks for the end user. Okay, so this is the user. This is the default credentials. Let me log in. Okay, yes. So I've just reloaded. And yes, this is how a case worker portal looks like. This is how an end user sees my application. Okay, so he can just click on new to see all the case types. What all he can see, he do not see any case life cycle, he do not see any case statuses, the decisions, he do not see anything related to that. He can only execute the case, and depending upon the values or depending upon the conditions you have given, the case would navigate accordingly. And this is how end user looks at the application. So the complete view, different from what an admin or an author can see. So as an author, admin, you can go to case types, you can see, you can design it, you can change it. A lot of things are possible, right? You can see all of this parallel processing, the decisions, all of this is seen. But whereas for an end user, he can only create a case instance. He doesn't know what is there in it. That's why we need to define clear-cut statuses and all to just make sure he knows what is happening. Okay, let me submit. Okay, good. This is how an end user works on the application. Fine. Now, let us go with the routing options. Okay? And actually, before that, let us also see how a manager looks at the application. So, definitely, a manager will have better privileges than what an end user can have. So, let me log off from the user portal and we'll log in as a manager. So, where are my manager operators? Sure, we'll do that then. Yeah, maybe we'll just look at the manager portal. So the views for a manager and for an end user will be different. A manager will have a lot of new or other aspects. The dashboard is different. You can see which cases are in which stages. You can see some reports like what is happening. This is a recruitment based cases by status. There are 11 cases here, of which 3 are under the interview process. 1 is released offer. The rest of the 7 are in the submission. So he can see a lot more other things than what an end user can see. He can also create the requests, right? Because managers also can create, profiles. They can add in some references and all. So they have access to both manager aspects as well as an end user aspect also. Okay. So yes, these are about the end user portal and the manager portal. Okay, so let me also log in with the senior manager to just change the user ID and password. And once this is done, we'll go back to the admin portal to add the routing options. So senior manager will also have the same kind of view what a manager has, because both of them are part of the same person. Okay. Yes, I see almost the same view. Yes. Okay, and he can also create new cases if required. Okay. So far, good. Now let me add in the routing mechanism. Okay. Before that, I'm just going to save and run to just see. I did not add anything so far. I just wanted to see how the case is running. Okay. So let me proceed further. Right. So we are aware of this particular part. I mean, we know the case ID, then status, the SLS, then all of that is seen on the screen. Good. And here comes your case details. I can see who is the one that has created the case, who is the one that has last acted on this case. This is created by whom? By the admin. Because I, as an admin, I have created the case. And what is the last action that is done? It is also by the admin 1 minute ago. So if I just proceed on with this, I can go ahead with all the steps in the transaction. For example, so generally, the first stage of whatever is related to submission is done by the candidate. Correct? Good. So submission stage being part of the candidate is good, is acceptable. But can I have the written test also routed to the candidate? No. Right? And my approval of the candidate, the decision does not lie with the candidate. It has to be by the recruitment team. So the candidate cannot decide what has to be the result of the interview. Right? This approve reject definitely cannot be by the end user. Correct? And he cannot, provide the IT, or he will not be able to provide the access and all. So one single user handling the complete transaction cannot be possible at any cost. It will not be possible. You take any business transaction, you will have 3 or more people involved in it. So here also, routing brings you that different people will be acting on the system or acting on your transaction. So let us go back. We will decide the routing options. Okay, so the first one, the create stage is okay. Submission has to be done by the candidate only. So whoever is creating the case, he will always be the current user. And you see this assignment, when I click, you see the options. Route 2 is set to current user, which is as expected. I don't need to change it. And mind that your routing will only happen for user interactions. It cannot happen for automated steps, just like SLE. Then again, follow up with HR is also to the current user, experience info, provide documents, all of this is routed to the current user. Even BGV info is also to the current user. Good. So I don't need to change the routing option for any of the steps under submission stage. What about written test? Assume a written test has to be taken care by the manager. So what I could do is I can choose a specific user. And when I choose a specific user, I should also mention who is that user. So mentioning a specific user will not do anything. You should tell which user it is. So for that, again, I have different options. You can directly give the user name. You can give the manager name here, or you have some reference fields. The user reference fields will also be there. So we can add that. And you can also select the reporting manager for each operators. So if that is the case, you can directly choose the reporting manager. Okay? And then it could be a participant. So who is a participant here? Here we only have one participant, which is the owner, I mean, the one who created the case. Owner is always the one who created the case. In this context, for specific user, let me use username. And what is the name of the manager here? The operator ID is manager @REC. Okay. So written test is now the responsibility of the manager. Okay, good. What about approve reject step? Where is the second step, approve reject? Okay, so this also, let me route it to a specific user again. And I will let this be a senior manager this time. Okay, good. Then feedback. So assuming a manager is collecting the feedback here, so I will route it to the specific user again, which is a manager. And offer acceptance. Whose responsibility it is to work on the offer acceptance? I mean, who will decide whether the offer has to be accepted or not? Is it manager? Is it senior manager? Who do you think? Hello? Yeah, it is manager, exactly. Pritik, I hope you're able to see the screen, right? The case lifecycle screen. Yes? Okay, great. Offer acceptance is now the responsibility of the current user. Okay? Or it could be like you can choose a specific user and you can choose a participant and you can select the owner. So it goes back to whoever has created the case. Okay? So rest of the steps also related to onboarding and all should be routed appropriately. It should be part of the onboarding team, HR onboarding, admin onboarding, likewise. We can go ahead with the different routing options. Okay. So far, we have seen two routing options. One is current user, one is specific user. Let us run the case. Okay, let me save it here. But I will start running it from the end user perspective, not from the admin anymore. Okay. Let me log in with the user and I will create a transaction and I'll see how it routes. Let me go back and I'm going to log in as a user. Okay. So let me create a new case instance, click on new and return. So the case ID is the key here because that's the unique identifier. So let us make a note of the case ID. R6006 is the case ID. Good. Let me give the name hello world and the phone number, email. Okay. And then some date of birth because that's how an end user will enter the details. He will not skip any of these details, right? Even though if it's not mandatory. Okay, good. Let me submit. University, then bachelor's degree or master's grade, and gap in education 1 year. So he'll follow. He'll provide documents. Good. And you see now the case status is last updated by the user, and it is created by the user. Once experience 5 years. Previous employee, okay, assuming yes, so that I can reduce one step at least. So you see, once the submission stage is done, I no longer see any of the other assignments. Why? It says the case is routed appropriately. Now, whom should I check with for this case? Whose responsibility it is to handle the case, to take it further? Can a user do anything? I applied for the job, which means my task is done. Who takes over? Yes, it is a manager because the written test is routed to the manager. Let us see. Now I'll log off as in the user part is done. He would log off. Let the manager log in. So here is your manager portal. Okay. So where can I check what are the pending assignments of the operator of this particular manager? I can see it under the this particular tab. So if it's a specific user, is it a work queue or is it a work list? When it's a specific user, would it be a work queue or would it be a work list? Exactly. So it will be the work list. He will have this tab of manager will have all the assignments routed to him. If it is specifically routed to him, he'll be able to see all of it under this particular context. So I see R6006, which means a candidate has raised a request for recruitment. He has filled in the details and now the case is pending with manager for the written test step. So we did not define the view for it, but that's okay. Whatever it might be related to scheduling or giving some marks, whatever it might be. So the written test is to be acted upon by the manager. And the case is created by whom? Created by the user. Last updated by the user 2 minutes ago. Okay. Let us assume the manager has acted upon this, added some details. Let him finish the transaction. So it says it has been routed for approval. Whose task is it next to act on the case? Is it user? Is it manager or anyone else? The next step. Who would be the next user to act on this transaction? But interview is there, right? The interview has to be decided by whom? The result of the interview. It has to be decided by your senior manager. Exactly, your senior manager. So let me log in with the senior manager. So at each point of the case, there will be different people working on it. Yes, here is your senior manager and you see the work list. So the approval is pending for case R006. Let the senior manager check, assuming he has taken all the technical discussions and all of that is done. So he would decide whether the candidate can be approved or not. Let's do the positive scenario. Assume he has selected the candidate. There. And you see cases last updated by manager, created by user. Let him approve. Now again, the case now says, let's see what happens.
Can I use your phone torchlight?
Okay, it says again the case has been routed appropriately. The interview stage is done. And in release offer, who would be the next person to look after the case? Send offer email is anyways an automated step. It wouldn't be routed to anybody. So who should take care of the feedback? Is it user, manager, or senior manager? So the feedback is the responsibility of the manager. Let's log in with the manager to see if the case is pending with him or not. Oh, yes, I see R006 is pending with feedback. Yes, I see it. Assume the manager has collected the feedback, entered the details. Good. Let him proceed with the transaction. So after that, again, the case says it has routed appropriately. Who is the next person to act on the case now? After feedback. Any guesses? After feedback. Yes. The offer acceptance. So let the user decide whether you want to take up or let us see if that is routed to the user or not. The case again R006 again comes back to the user. Right? So that is it. Where is this? Let us just log in back and refresh. And all of these you can also see, I mean, whatever the routing options that are available, work queue, work list, current user, all of that, says that it is the responsibility of that user to work on the assignment. Unless they work on it, the case will not move further. Okay, if no decision is taken on this approval, and suppose nobody is acting on it, it is pending with the senior manager for about 1 month. So the case will not proceed further. It has been pending for 1 month. Right? Yes. So are we good with specific users and work list? Any questions so far? Are we clear? Current user and specific user. Are we good with these two? Yes. So current user and specific user we have seen, whereas work queue, we would need the, you might need to go to the dev studio for a moment to check on the work queue. Let us see how it works. Okay, so when I say a work queue, there are a team of people involved in it, right? So I need to navigate back to the dev studio to add or to decide what all or who all users would be part of that work queue. So let us finish the business logic, then we'll go back to the dev studio to create the work queue. Now, routing based upon business logic. Maybe let me give you a scenario here. Suppose you are hiring a fresher person without any experience. It's just a college passed out grad. So in that case, in order to approve his candidature, maybe a manager or senior manager should do the task. Right? I don't need an approval from CEO to hire an intern. Right? Assuming a large sized organization, I don't need a CEO to approve the interns. Right. Yes. So we were talking about this business logic based routing. Right. I mean, yes, this scenario, suppose if you are hiring an intern for your organization, you don't need the approval of a CEO, right? Maybe a senior HR manager or a manager HR would do. Whereas if you are hiring a CTO or a COO, then you definitely need some other approvals, right? Maybe CEO or board of directors or some sort of other people might need to provide some approvals. So these are special scenarios where the routing is, based upon the business rules or business logic. Right? So let us see how this works. Suppose there is a written test, okay, and let me choose the business logic here. And here I need to build the business logic, the conditions on what basis you want to route, on whom to route, need to be defined. So these do not occur on day-to-day basis. They are like some special scenarios, some specific instances you need to use the business logic.
Yeah.
So let's see.
So how it will know in spite of, because you're defining in the same step, isn't it?
Right.
Where otherwise it's a normal flow.
No, here it routes based upon the conditions. It will check the conditions, just like your automated decision, right? So depending
Okay.
upon the decision, it moves to a particular assignment. Here, depending upon the business condition or business logic, it is routed to a specific person.
Okay.
Suppose I need to route to a senior manager. Okay. If what is the condition? When you want this to be routed to a senior manager? Maybe it depends upon the conditions, right? Maybe related to experience or depending upon the designation, I can choose. Your
I think
experience.
there's no
Okay.
designation, isn't it? So we can put it on.
Yeah, we did not define a designation.
Mhm.
So if you want it to be based out of a designation, we can create that field in any of the forms, and you can have it available here. Suppose if I want it based upon experience, experience is greater than maybe
10 years you can do that.
10 years, right? Maybe 10 years. Okay, you want this to be approved by a senior manager. Otherwise, if it's less than 10, it's okay. If a manager can work upon this. You have multiple conditions. Suppose if you have a range of experiences, maybe 0 to 5, 5 to 10, greater than 10. So three ranges are there. So I can define three different routing mechanisms. Okay. So suppose if I want one, if there's one more other manager operator, I can add in one more condition and I can route it accordingly. Okay. And along with this, I can also route it to a work queue as well. Not just an operator. It's not always a single operator. I can have a work queue also. So here comes your work queue option. So anyone in that team approve or can work on this transaction. Okay. And some routing conditions are based upon the skills. So we need to go back to the dev studio to work on these two. Generally custom options will not be defined in the app studio. So no worries. We don't need to throw much light on these. But except for these, the rest of the other four options, current user, specific user, work queue, and business logic, we have to be thorough with those. Okay, these two are not that important on the App Studio perspective.
Is it for system architect to design it?
Correct, exactly, right. Because we can do this only from the Dev Studio perspective. The other four, we should be really thorough with those other four options. Okay. Now let us see how business logic routing would work. Let us see. I'm going to submit.
Sorry, one question. It is not exactly related to this, but if the business analyst wants the system architect to do something on the logic here,
Mhm.
so where does he specify in the sense, because we do direct capturing of requirements, isn't it? So
Correct. Okay, let me show that as well. Suppose Mm. Okay, so let me show that on the Dev Studio. On the Dev Studio, you have actually something called as DCO. So all the objectives or specifications are captured there. Like
Okay, so when you, as a business architect, you will have access to the Dev Studio also,
yes, yes. So you will have access to both app and Dev Studios, not the
but you
admin
need
studio.
not do it. That's what you meant.
Correct, correct.
Configurations, you can leave it to the system
Yes, we
architects,
can
but
leave
you
it to
can just
the
write your
yeah,
specifications there.
correct. Exactly. Now suppose if I just want to run this, there's my business logic still there. I think we did not save it.
Oh, is it?
Mm, no, we did not save it. Okay, let me just rebuild the logic
Yes.
once again. To senior
Senior
manager
manager.
experience greater than into 10. Otherwise, I want the manager to work on the written test. Let me submit. Now I am going to save it, but I let the user work. I mean, I don't want to check it as an administrator. We will check it from the user perspective.
Mhm.
Okay, let us log in as user now. Okay, let me create. Okay, case ID R6007. Let me proceed. Okay, provide documents. And where is the experience? Okay, let me put the experience to some 16 years. Okay, so be the next person, or who would be the person to work on the written test of this transaction?
Senior manager.
Right, exactly. Let us see. Once the submission stage is done, now let us check the senior manager's work list to make sure that it is routed correctly. So yes, here comes your 6007 depending upon the business logic. Right? So if it is less than the 10 years, it would be routed to the manager. The next step, if I advance, so the next step is approval, right? So who is this routed to? It is routed to the senior manager only. So I see that he can handle both written test and the candidate selection. Both are now the responsibility of the senior manager. This is because written test, based upon the condition, it is routed to the senior manager. Whereas technical discussion, it is dependent upon the senior manager directly because we have given a specific user condition. Right? If I approve it, it goes to the manager next because feedback is again the responsibility of the manager. Okay? So when I go and check in the manager portal, I will have it. Yes, I have the R6007 pending with the feedback. So clear with the business logic? Are we good?
Yeah, yeah. I think more work is needed, isn't it? Because it's now getting
Yes,
a bit
because
complicated. Like you can do
true,
lot of things. You can do lot of things
true,
from here onwards, isn't it?
true, correct, correct. Okay, let us also check that one last routing option, which is related to a work queue. Okay, so work queue is something. So these are also generated while you create your application. So one default work queue for your application is created by default. But
Okay.
work queue, it needs to have a set of people, right? So how will I know which team or which users are involved in that part of work queue? I cannot know that directly from the, I cannot know it directly from here. Let me check the manager. I want to see how this looks like. Okay. So here, if you observe, I don't have anything related to a work queue. It says a name, email, telephone, and some skills are there. Some professional information is there. So I didn't do anything. I just clicked on users and then clicked on people. I see all the users of my application. I clicked on manager. Okay. I'm observing the profile of this manager. So I see some personal information like full name, email, telephone, some professional information is there, role, unit, and a report and all. There's also some skill. But nowhere I can see anything related to a work queue. Correct?
Yeah.
Adding a user to a particular work queue can be done from the Dev Studio only. So let us just switch back to the Dev Studio. Okay. So I want to see all the operators of my application first, so that I will decide which operator has to be part of which work queue. Okay. So work queues could be specific to your departments. It could be based upon skill. Like all people trained on credit card related issues could be part of a credit card work queue. Likewise. So if I want to see all the operator instances, let me click on records. Okay, then you have organization as a category, inside which you have operator ID. This shows all the available operators on your application. In fact, it shows all the operators available on that particular node.
On that particular
Node. I mean, wherever your
okay.
application is. So all available applications on that node will be available here.
Okay.
Okay. Right. So now I am interested in this manager at the rate REC, this operator. Okay. So let us see how an operator profile looks on the Dev Studio. It has to be a little more than what we see on the App Studio, correct?
Yeah.
Yes. So this is how it looks like. So we have like 4 different tabs here, and let me choose the work tab. Okay. So under the work tab here, you have the work queue. Okay. So here is where I can add an associated work queue to this operator. So that means this manager is part of a specific work queue. Let me add, you have an add item, a plus sign here. So work queue. You will always have a default work queue available as part of your organization. You remember our organization division unit, right? XYZ, India, and Hyderabad. So there's always one default work queue available for your organization. So let me just use this. So default at the rate XYZ. Let me save. You can also open it and you can see what that operator, what that work queue consists of or how it looks like.
And you can create more work queues also if you want later.
Yes.
For you.
Yes, we can create. Yes. But this creating of work queues and all is a bit on the developer's perspective. They would be doing it.
Okay.
So we would be more like we would be using it. That's okay. So you can ask the developers that what all work queues you need depending upon the functionality or depending upon the business rules and conditions. So they would create and they give it to you. Okay. Now this part of the default at the rate XYZ. Good. Let me add in the senior manager also to the same work queue. Now whoever is available within these two can take up my tasks. So you can have more operators also. Okay. So a work queue can have a number of operators associated with it. Okay. Now manager and senior manager both are associated to a work queue called default@xyz. Okay, looks good. So the name is default team for XYZ is the name. Now let me go back, and this time on the App Studio, I would be using a work queue here. Okay, so this time for the written test, I'm going to use a work queue. So whoever is available on that particular team, they can work on the written test of the candidate. Okay, let me save it. And let me also put the feedback to the work queue. This also I'll add it to the work queue default team. Let me see. Okay, now written test and the feedback both are routed to the work queues. The approval still lies with the senior manager. Okay, now let us see what happens. Okay, let the user or candidate run a case instance. So what is the transaction ID? R6008. Okay, let me submit. Let me advance the case. I'll just use a previous employee so I can reduce one execution of a step. Okay, it is routed. So it goes where? It goes to the written test. Okay, so who is responsible? Now, which operator or which user
Both,
should?
isn't it?
Correct. So let us
Now
see if it
both
is
will get it. One of them. So if both gets, if one of them approves, actions it, then it will go out of the queue, isn't it?
Exactly. Correct. So let us check both. Suppose first let me check with the senior manager. So we'll see whether it's available in the work queue or not. So it's not available on the work list this time because it's not specified to him. Rather, it's available on the work queue. So there is one in the list of default team XYZ. So let's see. Yes, default team, we see it. It's up to this user whether he want to work on it or not. There's no compulsion. If he's available, if he has time, he can work on it. Or otherwise, he doesn't need to work on it. It is available for senior manager. Good. What about manager? Is it available for him as well?
Yeah.
Let us check. It's not available on the work list. This is the earlier one.
Yeah, it should be on the queue.
Yes, we have it on the queue. So let the manager take it. Once he opens it from the work queue, it is no longer available for other users. Now from the work, it goes to the work list of this particular manager. Okay, it would be emptied when this would be pushed out of the work queue and it is inserted onto the work list of the manager. So that other users cannot work on the same task. It is moved up, right? Okay, so once assuming the manager works on it, his task is done, he will just advance the case. Then the next aspect is for approval. So approval is part of whom? Is part of the senior manager. So let the senior manager come in and let him work on the assignment.
Yeah, that should be in the list, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes, it is on the work list. So if it is intended to you, it will be in your work list. If it is intended to everyone, it would be on the work queue. Right. So now the approval is again done. Yes, the approval is done. So the next aspect is feedback. So feedback is like part of a work queue. So it would be available for both senior manager and manager. Now, if I want to see it from the senior manager perspective, just click on the dashboard because I'm already in the senior manager's profile. So I see it available here. Default team XYZ. So if he is available, he can just take up the assignment right away. So
Oh, if you
yeah,
click on that, it will. If you click on that, it will like you have taken it up.
correct. Yes. If I just click on it, it means that I'm opening that transaction. It says R6008 is already open because the same user is working on it, right? So it says it is
Okay.
already open. So let me just click on save. Yes. So now I am on the feedback. Okay. So it is up to us to decide, up to us as in probably the business user
No,
would decide.
sometimes you will open and you might feel this is not for me. I think sometimes internally you will have it, isn't it? You want to move it again to the
Correct.
queue. Can you do that?
Yes, yes, you can do it. Let me show it. So there are some bulk actions here. You click on bulk actions. So
So
you
your
you
manager will have that option.
correct. So you can move your transaction to other people, right? You can select a case. So you'll be, if you want to create one, you want to update or you want to process, you can
Mhm.
choose. So let me process. So this shows all the existing ones, and you'll be able to, yeah. So you see, assign to senior manager. Then, are there any cases regarding this? Mm, okay, let me just remove this. So you get to see all the cases. Right. So you see, these are cases that were created. And
Yeah,
if
so you
you
can push back to the queue.
want, correct, you can select some actions. Right. So you see, you can transfer the assignment. You can transfer some case ownerships, or if you want to resolve or withdraw, you can do it. So all these are possible.
Okay.
Yeah. Because not always I need to work on the assignment I've chosen. Right? Sometimes it might be a little more complicated. I need some assistance and all. So I
Yeah.
can just transfer it to someone else. I can do that.
Okay.
Right. So routing is all about providing a responsibility or providing uh, a user that needs to work on your assignment. Okay.
Mm.
Right. So are we good with this? Any questions related to routing so far? Are we clear?
Yeah, clear. No.
Yeah, but routing definitely needs a hands-on practice because we do a lot of log in, log off and all. So we
Yeah.
need to be clear as in like which operator you are checking. Are you checking the right transaction ID? All this is important
Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
case you check other case on the manager portal, you don't see the routing happening correctly. I think there's a scope
True.
for a lot of confusion here. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. It's only theoretically clear. Yeah, till when you do it, it will
Right.
be more.
Right. Right. Correct.
And it's easy to forget this, I think.
Mhm. That is also true.
Yeah, until you do it.
Yeah. Correct. Correct. You do it once or twice. I mean, each a routing scenario, just try it once or twice. I think that should be good. So add in some business
Yeah,
conditions and just try doing it. I mean, not that complicated, but definitely hands-on is required.
yeah.